Okay, so today we're going to cover scripted textures. Now, I'm not going to cover actually designing an interface. Let's say that is going to be maybe for like something later, because that takes a lot more time. It's infinitely more advanced compared to a basic setup of setting up just an actor and a scripted texture. But what we're going to do, I'm going to show you a little trick. And it's basically sort of like my level inheritance. Let's open DM Morpheus, okay? All you have to do is open it. And then let's go to another map, a new map. Now, go ahead and make your room. I'm making a cylinder, standard primitive cylinder. And you can go ahead and texture it or whatever. It's not going to be good texture. There we go. Okay, great. So I'm going to save this as test map 2. I don't need that. So let's go ahead and get started. First of all, let's go to my level. And in my level, let's create a new texture. And this is going to be your standard 256 squared. It's going to be a scripted texture. This is the class. And name it whatever you want. Now, the important part about scripted textures isn't the texture itself, except for in case you want a source texture. You don't need it, but in case you want one, then you can put one there. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to put something from just a random... there we go. Okay. So this source, all it does is inherit, basically, a texture from another texture and place it as its surface, if you will. Now, the special part about scripted textures is that you can basically draw on them using Unreal Script. So let's go ahead and create a 256 squared with a 16 breadth cube, well, rectangular prism. And on here, I'm going to go to my level and make sure you apply the scripted texture, not the source texture, but the scripted texture as the surface, okay, of whatever you're going to want to have the scripted texture as. Now let's expand info in actors, and let's go to client scripted texture and open this, add a scrolling message texture, okay? Now the most important part about this is that you set the scripted texture in scrolling message texture to the test script as we have here, the scripted texture you just made. And let's make our font color something that it goes well with that. I'm gonna say something like, I guess red will go well. And for font, this is where the trick comes in. We opened Morpheus, and in opening Morpheus, we sort of basically also inherited the my level package of Morpheus. So if you go to scripted and select all, you'll see that you have a package that is my leveled, but it also has a font, and that's the condemned font. Okay, so oops, now I have to go back to that. There we go. So what you can do is then put condemned font in here, and voila, you got basically a rather unique, comparatively unique font. So pixels per second literally is pixels per second, and is measured by the level times seconds interval, and not something like tick or something like that. Let's put it to 150, and you have to play with it if you want to like have an accurate amount of time as it passes by or something like that. Scroll width is the expanse of your texture going across the surface, if you will. And Y position is quite literally the Y position. If you look at something like UI window or any interface in Unreal, Y is obviously just like Y in a Cartesian plane. So let's put that to something random like 32. So I'm gonna make it caps as well. It's just gonna say hello world. So let's go ahead and test this. Oh, there you are. The thing about the font color is that sometimes it won't work depending on the source texture or something like that. And commonly what you might want to do, especially for the more complex interfaces, is you might want to place a false surface and then make a translucent black scripted texture, completely black, as the actual scripted texture. Then probably this will work. But the reason why it doesn't, and it's just gray, it says hello world and it's gray, is because of the surface, the source texture. But that's fine because we already proved that it works. Now let's open Screen by Mike Keel. This is a more complex interface, and it's obviously very useful. But let's just scratch the surface of it. Go back to client scripted texture. With this one, it actually comes with packaged scripted texture. So let's open scripted screen, and let's add a screen property, an actor, and on this property we're gonna say something like screen2. And it really doesn't matter what you put on this. In fact, you can make any surface a scripted texture. So let's make sure that we set our scripted texture. Now, I don't know if I mentioned it, but Michael's screens are weirder in that you have to play with the numbers, because for some reason I never looked in the code, but it's almost as though it doesn't accept a Y0 value and an X0 value as being at the top left corner like normal screens. But for this, we're actually going to have to get another one. We're going to have to go to screen slide and add a screen slide page, because that's what it's going to reference. So go back to screen, and then it's going to have slide current. So we want that to be screen slide page 0, which references the actual object right here. And under this, we're going to say pretty much the same thing. You can play with all this. This is just customization of what's going on. And you could even reference other slides there, so it switches from one side to another. So let's just put hello world again. It doesn't matter. Sometimes in the cases of lit maps, you might want to also unlight it, because if you don't, sometimes it just doesn't show. But the important part about it with respect to simply getting it there is that you make sure that you have correct settings so it actually shows, because it will show if you have the scripted texture on there, but it's not going to show in the right way because it's going to be offset somewhere else. Unfortunately, as exemplified there, but it still works, of course. And that's just a clean and quick way to add that sort of interface. Now let's switch the width to 256 and the breadth to 16. Let's add another one that we're going to open Q Computers. This is another, probably the most complex interface, but again, very powerful, I think. Just to play around with it, you can see that you can do a lot with it. And again, this basis is the client scripted texture. So we're going to make another. Well, actually, you can actually go to script and screen and just set it to another screen as long as it's scripted. And let's unlight this one too. And build lighting. Now, let's also reference this screen too. Every client scripted texture needs to have a scripted texture to draw the surface of whatever it has on it. And of course, you have a lot more diverse of an actor here with more properties. This, fortunately, does have XY at the top left like a standard UI in Unreal. So we don't have to do anything for that. But I'm just going to make a little offset so it'll be a little further away from the corner. And that's all you have to do for setting up Q Computers as well. Because in this case, the computer base or the base scripted texture draws everything instead of having to reference a slide or something like Michael. And as you can see there, you have your scripted texture from Q Computers. That's Michaels, and this is the standard Unreal scripted texture. And that is basically scripted textures in a nutshell.